Welcome back to Intro to Python Skills for AI powered by Capital One. You did it. You've done so well. And you've gone from the point of using just the basics of variables and learning what a function is, all the way up to using regex and imports and all of that kind of stuff. But today is the day we finally put your skills to a test. You've managed to go and build a web app. You know, pretty basic. It just goes and gets retweets and responds with what the tweet is. Not too useful. But we're actually today going to make it so it is using AI. To make it so instead of just returning that tweet, it is returning a message that sounds like that person. Sounds like something they would say. And we're going to use the Markovify library for that. But well done for getting to this point. Learning programming is tricky and you've done an incredible job so far. Now, on the screen right now is the application we're going to be working on. In fact, it's pretty much the same thing we just spent the last couple of episodes working on. But there is a big difference. When this app has a message submitted to it with, the name of the person whose data we want to get, then instead of just returning it, it is going and using AI to go and, make a pretty good sounding response. And just like last time, it's going to use all of that scraping and formatting techniques that we used, but it's taking it one step further, using the Markovify library to generate all of the responses. Now, how are we going to build it? I'm going to really quickly recap some of the stuff we talked about last time, but I'm also going to talk about some new things here. So we're still going to use Python, which is our programming language. We're still using Glitch, which is the program we're using to program, or an IDE, effectively, except Glitch has the extra function of hosting it for us. We're still going to use Flask, which is the library which handles all of our requests and handles the web app side of things, but we're adding in Markovify. Now, Markovify is a Python library that generates Markov chains, which I'm going to explain what they are shortly, but they're going to be super useful. But for now, all I'm going to say is that a Markov chain is what generates our fake response from our Twitter celebrity, or cat, or brand account, depending on what you're happening to be using your app on. But what is actually a Markov chain? Well, in artificial intelligence, there is lots of different models. In math, you might have seen different kind of models, and some of the graphs you've worked with might be linear or straight lines or quadratic. There's lots of different models here. If you're not big on math though, don't worry. I'm not particularly sure what either of those words mean either. Now, a Markov chain is a complex model, and it's used to predict values in the future based on a given data set. And we can use this model to generate the fake responses for our app. But what actually is a model? Well, all it actually is a mathematical way to predict future values. The nice thing about the Markovify library is it means you get to do a little bit less math. Now, here's a really simple example of a Markov chain. Pretend there is only two types of weather, sunny and cloudy. We've got rid of rain because who likes rain in their life? Now, let's say you wanted to be able to guess the weather tomorrow. You want to be able to guess, is it going to be sunny or is it going to be cloudy? And you look back through weather reports for the last year and you write down every single day, whether it was sunny or cloudy. And you do some math because you're a genius, and you learn that, over the last year, if any day was cloudy, 25% of the time the next day was sunny, and 75% of the time the next day was cloudy. And then you can use that information to make a table of what you think the weather would like for the next couple of days. Well, here's an example on our screen. We can predict that here's some cloudy days, here's a sunny day, and the day after the sunny day, it looks like our pattern has continued. In total, there is 8 days, and, out of them, 6 of the days are going to be cloudy, and 2 of the days are going to be sunny. Which, 25% versus 75%. We got that one right. Now, this is a really, really simple example of a Markov chain. Weather is actually way more complicated than just cloudy or sunny. Imagine if we added partly cloudy or even shock horror, made it so rain existed again. Now we'd have 4 different types of weather, and we would need to keep track of all of them. Calculating that by hand would be a nightmare. Can you imagine trying to do that math in your head? I struggle to add up how much my chocolate is going to cost at the supermarket. Instead of doing this all by hand though, we're going to use a Python library called Markovify. Now, in this example, we've just used, weather, but we're not using weather here. Well, Markov chains can be used for tons of different things. And in this example, we're actually going to use Markov chains to predict for words that people would use based on their tweets. Now, Markovify is a Python library that can be added to any Python project, just like any other Python library. And it takes a large input of text and it runs some calculations on them to, go and work out basically what it predicts in the future. It's doing the same kind of calculations we just saw, except it's doing them in a significantly more complicated way. But we don't have to worry about that complicated stuff because Markovify does it for us. Now, what Markovify will do is it will calculate how often one word appears after the next in the text input. Very simply put, it will go make a list of every word in the text, and then it makes a list of what comes next and how many times each pattern repeats. Just like that example just did with clouds. It then uses those percentages to generate fake sentences based on how likely one word is to come after another. It's not perfect. Remember, artificial intelligence isn't always the most intelligent thing ever, but it does work sometimes. And if you see some strange output, don't worry. It's probably not your fault. It's probably Markovify's fault. Now, let's jump into actually coding. Head over to the link on your screen right now and press the Remix Your Own button. This app may look a bit similar to the one we just spent our time working on, but make sure you are starting from this new project. Otherwise, you're going to run into some unexpected issues as we've added some new files to here. And also because it means that if you did have any issues in the last couple of episodes, well, this is going to have them all fixed. Now, just like last time, the first thing we're going to need to do is go into our .env file and make sure our environment variables are correctly set. We talked about this last time. Environment variables are super useful. The correct ones are actually on your screen right now, so make sure they're all kind of popped in and ready to go. Once you've done that, let's go and dive into what each of the files we're going to be working on today contain. So the first step for is MLH Twitter API. And this file is what's going to allow us to use the Twitter API to return way more tweets than we've returned in the past. We're going to learn about why this matters in just a little bit. We've also got Markov.py, and this is where we're going to write our code that uses the Markovify library to create our bot's responses. But let's actually go and write some of that code. The first thing we're going to need to do is if we want to use the Markovify library, we're going to need to import it. Can you remember how to import the Markovify library into this file? Well, at line 1, there's a gap saying write code here, so that's a pretty good hint. And I'm going to say import Markovify. Make sure you spell it correctly, otherwise you're going to run into some issues. So there we go. We can use the Markovify library inside our code now. Okay, so the next thing that we do is going to be the hardest thing we've done throughout this series. But don't worry, I know you can do it, and we're just using things we've used before. So don't worry if this seems super confusing, we're going to get through this. So on line 9, we have the generate bot answer with text model function. It's a pretty long name that, but it's very clear what it is. This function is going to need to do several things. Firstly, it's going to create a variable called bot answer, and it's going to set the value of that to none. Then we're going to go and split the user question, which is inputted as a parameter, into a list of words. Then we're going to retrieve one random word from that list, and we're going to go and pass that word into the make sentence with start function from Markovify. And we're going to call that function on the text model input, which is also a parameter. Then we're going to get what that responds with to our bot answer variable. And finally, we're going to go and return bot answer. Pause the video here. Give it a go and see if you can do that all by yourself. But when you get stuck, I'm here to walk you through it. But do pause the video. Remember, the best way of learning programming is by actually doing it yourself, and me just showing you it all is not going to be the most useful thing ever. So see how far you can get. Well, how did it go? Let's give it a go. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of this pass, because we're going to return our bot answer. And let's go and create our bot answer variable. and I'm going to set it to equal none. That means we can use this throughout our function. Next up, we need to go and split the list of words in user question. So I'm going to go and store that in our own variable. I'm going to say word list is equal to, and well, I know there is a method I can use on strings called .split, which lets me split it. So let's say user question, which is our parameter, .split, and well, I know there's a space between every word. So I'm going to say split it on every space. The reason a quotes are there is because even though it's just an empty space, it is still a string. And yeah, we're saving that to our word list variable. Next, we need to go and choose a random word. Now, this file has a random library imported, and if you check the documentation, you'd have seen there is a very easy way of choosing a random word from a list. In fact, a random anything from a list. We used the random library in the past to go and choose a random number, but it can do way more than that. So let's set a variable called random word to random.choice, so use the choice method in the random library, to equal word list. Okay, so we have our random word. Amazing. Next, we need to go and use this. So first of all, we need to go and say bot answer is equal to, because we need to make it so the bot answer is what we're replying with. And I'm going to run our text model that's passed in. Text model, and I want to use the make sentence with start method that we talked about earlier. And then that's going to return with bot answer. Amazing, that's super easy, but we want to make sure we are having at least a little bit of error checking here so that if things don't work, we are accounting for them properly. So let's say that, first of all, we're going to use user question, strict equals false, just so we're passing in the correct thing and also setting a proper config thing. Now, if this doesn't return what we need, let's say, so if bot answer is still equal to none, then bot answer is going to be equal to text model dot make sentence. And that is just another way of Markovifying your data. It's just another Markovify function, and it doesn't use your user input. It just Markovifies the Twitter data, so it won't be as good, but at least we're returning something. Finally, if the bot's answer is still, after we did all of that, equal to none, then we're going to say bot answer is going to equal to, well, we're just going to run the same function again and have another go. Generate bot answer with text model, and we're going to pass in our Twitter handle, our user question, and our text model too. And the reason we do this is because AI can be a little bit finicky sometimes, and if we try it again, it might return something as expected. Now this is called recursion, calling a function inside another. Recursion. But recursion is a very, very, very deep, dark rabbit hole. It's really useful, but you will get confused if you learn about it. So I really recommend having a Google and looking into what recursion is and why it's useful. But do just be aware that it isn't the most intuitive thing ever. It takes a bit of time to get your head around. And then, well, finally, we're returning our bot answer. We did that at the start. Well, okay, let's recap what we just did, because we just did a lot there. We used a function from Markovify called make sentence with start, and we called it on text model. And text model is the output of feeding our celebrity or cat or brand account, whatever we use, tweets into Markovify. Now we're asking Markovify to create a sentence, and we want it to base that sentence on the random word in that user's question. Okay, awesome. Let's give it a try. So let's say show, let's say next to our code, and I'm going to go and say hello to @MLHacks. I'm going to say hello, how are you doing today? And I'm going to go and send a message. And it's not said anything. Well, let's investigate. When you have bugs in your program, you can investigate by adding print statements. It's a great way of debugging your code. So let's make sure this function is actually being run. Just before our return, let's say print me if this function runs. And let's go and open our console. And let's see if anything actually gets printed. So let's say, hey, I want to chat with this person. I'm going to say test, send message. Nothing's being printed to our console. What if I say tools and logs? And is there anything in our logs? No, it's not printing our statement. That's not great. Okay, well, it's because we ran the function, but we never actually called it. So let's go and fix that now. On line 26, it says we should be using the Markovify library to do this step, but I don't see us using it anywhere. So let's go and have a look at the documentation. Here is the basic usage documentation for Markovify. And remember, we use it to generate the Markov chain model. Looking at this, which line of code do you think it is that is generating the model? Can you see an obvious one? Well, I think when they set text model to equal to markovify.text, that's probably what's generating the model. So let's go and write some code and implement that. So first up, I'm going to get rid of this pass because we want to actually return data. I'm going to use the getUserTweets function we made in the last couple of episodes to go and get the list of the user's tweets for our Twitter handle that we're passing in as a parameter. So we're going to say tweets equals get user tweets for this Twitter handle. But remember, we made our clean tweets function, so we're actually getting a slightly more useful bit of data. So I'm going to say clean tweets is equal to clean tweets data. We made that function too. Tweets. Next, I'm going to get all of these and I'm going to convert them into a string. These clean tweets, and I'm going to turn them into a string. So I'm going to say text equals, and this is going to be confusing, but don't worry. So I'm going to say use a map, and I'm going to say this. But what does this actually do? Well, it gets our clean tweets and it converts them into a string. Maps are super interesting, but slightly complicated. They're like for loops, but a bit fancier. If you're interested, go and check out the Python documentation. And then finally, we're going to use this text we created and stored in a variable on our text model. So we're going to say text model is equals to Markovify. Remember, we're using that library. Dot text. Remember, we saw this earlier. We're using the dot text method and we want to write on our text. Okay. Finally, now we've created our text model, we want to go and generate our bot answer. So I'm going to say our bot answer is equal to generate, let's make sure we put spacing there actually to make it look nicer. Generate bot answer with text model using the Twitter handle we passed in, the user question that's passed in, and the text model that we just created. And finally, I'm going to go and return our bot answer. So let's say I want to go and chat with @MLHacks. I'm going to say, hello, how are you? And I'm going to go and send our message. But hey, we are still not getting anything back. It still didn't print, I don't think, as well. Let's go check our logs. No, our print me if this function runs is still not here. Why? Well, it's because we need to go and edit main.py, so it's using this. So let's head over to main.py. And, well, let's import what we just made. So at the top, let's say from Markov, from the markov.py file we were using, import star. This means import every function inside of it. Okay, now on line 20, where are we looking? Line 25, we're saying tweets equals get user tweets, but we actually do this in ourselves inside of our library. Well, our file anyway that we made. So let's get rid of this. And we're also going to get rid of this because we're cleaning our tweets ourselves. And instead, we're going to use the generate bot answer that we created to go and do everything. So let's give it a try. I'm going to go and say I want to chat with @MLHacks, and I'm going to just say hello to MLH. I'm going to press send message, and MLH is saying, hey, I should go and check out Hacks and Crafts dev posts and see all of their projects. Whoa, isn't that so cool? But in order to get actually good responses, we're gonna need to give our AI a little bit more data. So Markovify can generate better responses, let's go and use the Twitter API instead of scraping for tweets. That way we can get way more. So let's head back into our Markov file and let's go and replace get user tweets with fetch. We have this as a function in the MLH Twitter API file if you're interested in seeing how that works. And there we go. I save and I go and refresh our bot. I'm gonna go and chat with @MLHacks again. I'm gonna say hello again. And it says failure is in the mainframe. Well, we don't have a mainframe, but we definitely didn't just fail right now. So, well done. You've just gone and built an application using AI, and you should be really proud of yourself for getting through that. I'm super proud of you, and the learning doesn't have to stop here. So what are my next steps? Well, first of all, I would recommend checking out the link on your screen right now for a quiz. If you want to go and consolidate some of that knowledge, it would be a great time to go and do it. I would also recommend checking out courses such as Code Academy or even just tutorials on YouTube for more, and also keep an eye out for more opportunities from Capital One. But with that, it is a goodbye from me. I hope you learned a ton of things this series. Definitely take the code we've been working on, try and repurpose it, try and do cool new things with it, and keep building awesome projects. I won't see you in the next episode, but I really, really hope you continue to build awesome applications. And I really hope this was a good start to your programming career, potentially. And if you do get anything cool done, make sure you tweet us @MLHacks. We would love to hear about what you get up to. But with that, it is goodbye from me, and have an amazing, amazing rest of your coding life.